There is a story told about a pony carriage that stopped in front of a small house in a little village. From that carriage stepped out an elderly lady who walked to the front of that house and asked politely for a glass of water. The lady of the house was not happy at the sudden arrival, and she expressed her displeasure by offering the water in a cracked cup. After the visitor had left, neighbor ran over and exclaimed, "Do you know who the visitor was?" You can only imagine the dismay when she was told that the visitor was actually the queen of the land. Ever since, it seems the cup has been held in high esteem, never shared with anyone, like a trophy, kept the cup that the queen had used. But that cup also always reminded the family of the missed opportunity. So often, the birthplace of Christ is portrayed in such bright and dazzling colors that we forget it's actually stable for animals. Dirty, stinking place which many of us would be happy to avoid. The reason why Jesus was born an outcast, the Bible says, is because when Joseph and Mary were to deliver the baby Jesus, there was no room. The last place left was the stable. In Bethlehem, where they were visiting, Joseph and Mary may have had friends and relatives, but all doors were barred. With the inn closed, with no place in the lodge, neither with the family nor friends, figuratively, but certainly the message was clear. There's no place for the baby Jesus. How little room there was in what was called the good society then. There was no room in the palaces of the emperors and the king. There was no room in the halls of the lawmakers of the parliaments or the forums of political discussion. Nothing has changed ever since. It seems, tell me, is it not true? There is so little place for Christ even today in what is called our good society. The world has place for the successful, for the powerful, for the influential. And that is precisely the reason when we fail, we falter, we grow weak, we look for a place to hide. The world has ample room for the pride and indolence, luxury and display, but deep down we really search for meekness, humility and integrity. These days there is so much of talk about tolerance. But as long as we are guided by our own prejudice to hate others, there is no room for Christ. Page after page, picture after picture, paragraph after paragraph, more indecency and profanity, so much so that for a family to watch teleserial together has become difficult. There is no room for Christ. We've been saddened by the increasing number of suicide among the farmers and the businessmen. The country has been enraged for the last few weeks over the gang rape and the murder of that young doctor in Hyderabad. Our eyes shed tears every time we hear of a soldier laying down his life so that we can be safe. Death is painful. At our home, we have a special place for soldiers because my father served in the army. My job as a counselor today involves helping family members and individuals cope with the loss of their loved ones. And I kid you not, if I have to tell you 1,000 times, death is painful no matter what the reason. But my great heartache for the last couple of years has been this. Teenagers, students, young people choosing to snuff out their own life. Do you know the number one reason for death among 15 to 30 years? If it was sickness or accident, if it was epidemic, war, or any of those kinds about which we have no control, we would have said, alas, we are helpless. But the number one reason for death among 15 to 30 years is suicide, because they don't find meaning and hope for their life. That is tragic. Because these are the young people, these are the students whom we call as the future, and if they don't find hope for tomorrow, it's a society where there is no room for Christ. I'm not a social reformer, but I'm a concerned citizen who believes in the rights and the privileges, but also intends in fulfilling the duties. This year we campaigned in 8 colleges, some of the best colleges in Pune, talking about student suicide. While we were doing this 1-month-long campaign, a student in our own backyard was struggling with those same thoughts. After 3 months of that campaign, when that student opened up, I was shocked. And I said to myself, no matter how much we are welcoming and we are willing to be there and we are willing to help, if the other person is not willing to face himself or herself, if that person is not willing to open up, how can we even stand with them? You see, the problem is not just out there, the problem is also in here. Why do we hesitate to look deep into ourselves? Is the story of our life all about meeting the needs of our household and our work while we ignore the deepest needs of our life? I don't know if it is pride, ignorance, indifference, or all three of it, that we choose to ignore the deepest needs. But one thing for sure, as long as we do not face our deepest need, as long as we ignore ourselves, there is no room for Christ. The message of Christmas, on the contrary, is this. While the inn at Bethlehem, the lodge at Bethlehem, the doors at Bethlehem were closed, the good society then and the good society today, on the contrary, the message of Christmas is God has room for all. God has room for all. God has room for the powerful and the weak. God has room for the successful and the failed. Christ is found in place where there is pain. There is room for the poor. There is room for the unacceptable. There is room for the lonely and the forsaken. There is room for those who are ashamed of themselves. There is room for those who cannot forgive themselves. Jesus was in fact called the friend of sinners, because while those people who were sidelined by the society, Jesus did not reject them, ignore them, or patronize them, but chose to be a friend to them. And while they could not mend themselves, He helped them by the power of His presence to purify their hearts and strengthen their lives. God's love knows no limit. His grace recognizes no bounds. He turns sorrow into joy and leads from shame to forgiveness. All of us recognize that there is a need to look deep into ourselves, but most of us politely refuse to do so. Some of us even express the regret for the inability to do it. Our time and thoughts have been captured by so many important things for whatever worth, and we postpone it, delay it, saying not today, tomorrow, some other day. The day is lengthened into weeks and months and years, and the life is gone, and there's been no room made for Christ. The appeal of Christmas about eating and drinking, giving and receiving, lighting and decorating, visiting and being visited. Make room for Christ. Grant Him entrance into your heart. Welcome Him home. At this Christmas, we have an opportunity to welcome Christ, because Jesus said, when you feed a hungry, when you give a drink to a thirsty, when you welcome a stranger, when you visit a person who is sick, when you clothe a naked, when you visit somebody in prison, Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, to the least that you do, it is you have done to me. I conclude with the hope that this Christmas season we would grant entrance to the Prince of Peace into our heart and into our home, and be able to bless somebody who is not as blessed as we are. Then truly it would be Christmas. I wish you a blessed Christmas season and a new year in which you will prosper in all areas of your life.